everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jennifer, and today is the long-awaited blush battle. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, a couple months ago I started thinking about all the blushes that were coming out. We've had just a plethora of blushes lately, and that I kind of wanted to do like a battle royale with all the different blushes, like trying to figure out which blush was the best blush. And the more I got into it, the more I realized is that, like with anything, it's more complicated. It's more complicated than that. And there's no such thing as a best blush. There's a best blush for me, and there's a best blush for like something that I want to wear last 24 hours. There's a best blush if I want something that's super pigmented. There's a best blush if I want something that's shimmery, etc., etc., etc. So what I've put together instead is a compilation of all the different blush brands that I have. I'm doing powders only right now. We can do a cream one later if you guys really want one, but these are just powders. I've picked shades for each brand that are similar. They're not the same because there's no way for me to really do that. If YouTube was my full-time job, then I probably could do it if I planned it out long enough, but considering that it's, you know, very part-time, I can't pick all the shades so that they exactly match. But they are rose pinky shades, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swatch them all for you, and we're gonna talk about the different formulas for each brand, and then at the end, I'm gonna give my awards for what I think is the longest wearing blush, the most pigmented blush, etc., etc., etc. So, if you're interested in seeing that, very long intro, just stay tuned. All right, so let's get into it. So one of the things I would say is I didn't pick every single brand I have. I do have a lot of different brands of blush, but what I did is I picked the ones that where I have enough of the blushes where I could make reasonable statements. So I don't only just have like one shade of the blush, because what I was worried about is if I had only one, maybe all the rest of them were, you know, one way and just this one blush was different kind of thing. So what I've done is I've only got the brands where I have enough of them that I feel like, okay, you know, I can really make a statement about what I think about them. A couple of other things I do have some brands where I have two different types of blushes or even three types of blushes from them. So, for example, I have from Chanel three different types of blushes: the old formula, the new formula, and the tweed formula. For Dior, I have the regular, what I call the regular formula, and then I have the backstage formula. For Tom Ford, I have the old formula and I have the new shade and illuminate. I do not have the Sisley. I don't have two different Sisleys. I only have the Sisley, what I call orchid highlighting blush. I don't have the pigmented blush, the ones that are single, because I only have one shade in that, and I felt like it was unfair for me to really make a commentary on it because I only have one shade, and the other shades might be very, very different. So in that way, there may be some things that I left out. But again, I don't have every brand that exists, obviously. There's lots of brands not represented here. I feel like I have quite a few. So let me just go through the brands that we're going to talk about today. We have NARS, we have Hermes, we have Tom Ford, we have Laura Mercier. This is in no order. We have Surratt, Suqqu, Chanel, Charlotte Tilbury, Dolce & Gabbana, Pat McGrath, Sisley, Chantecaille, Wayne Goss, Patrick Tar, Dior, and Makeup by Mercier. I think that's enough. So, okay, let's go through and start swatching so you guys can see. Now, I'm not doing these in any particular order, but I want you to see the shades on my arms. I thought about trying to put them all on my face. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. However, I've been on YouTube long enough now, almost, is it a year and a half? Sort of a year and a half, that if you're interested in seeing like these blushes in action, I've done videos on all of these things. I've done videos on the Makeup by Mario products and the Sisley and the Wayne Goss and the Pat McGrath when they came out and all of that. So, you know, you can search through my videos and I promise you there's videos for all of these things. Okay, so let's go alphabetically because that works. I mean, it's not the most inventive way, but why not? So interesting enough, we've got Charlotte Tilbury, Chanel, and Chantecaille. So the first one will be Chanel. So let's go through the Chanel, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do old formula, new formula, and tweed formula, okay? So we've had this conversation in many videos about the old versus the new formula, and the only thing that I can say is that I prefer the old formula, but we'll get into the specifics in a second. So let's do the old formula. This is Rose Ecrin. And I can smell it from here. Like I have it on the table in front of me and I can smell it. First thing about the Chanel blushes, the old formula. There is a scent to these blushes that is strong. I love the scent because it reminds me of my days working for Chanel. There's something about the smell, something about the scent that I really like, but it's strong and it lasts. Like it stays on. You can smell it for quite some time. I don't really know what it is, like rose almost is what it is, I think. And two things about this, they're 18 months shelf life, there's 0.21 ounces. I have kept Chanel blushes for years, old formula. I mean, years. Probably far longer than you're supposed to, but they keep the scent and the pigment's still really good. These are powdery blushes. They feel silky. They're very silky smooth. They are fairly pigmented. I'd say, well, for the scale today, 1 is the least pigment, 5 is the most. I'd say these are 3.5, maybe even a 4, depending on the shade. But they are very pigmented shades. They go on really easily and they're very easy to build. The thing is, most of the shades in the original formula are not particularly deep. The shades are lighter shades, so there's not a lot of deeper shades in the Chanel lineup for the older shades. The newer releases have Brune Rouge, for example, which is a deeper shade. In the old ones, I'd say Malice is probably one of the deeper shades, but there's not a lot. So there's less diversity in the shades of the Chanel blushes, just in general. Now, the new formula, this is in Rose Petal. And the scent is much, much less. Much, much less. Again, very powdery in the way that it works. Like when you put your finger on it, it kicks up pretty quickly. They are buildable, but I find that as you build them, you get more, they look less flattering as you build them. It's like they're too powdery. There's like too much powder on your face. Whereas the old Chanel's, as you built them, you didn't really get that. So you could put on layer after layer after layer. It didn't really age, or it didn't age me. The newer ones start to look powdery. They start to look more chalky on my skin. Again, I can only use my skin because I don't have anybody else's. The longevity is also not nearly as long. But if you feel them, like if you were just, I had a blindfold on, I really can't feel a difference between the two. I can tell a difference when I'm applying it, but when I feel them, they feel the same. The thing I've noticed by wearing the new ones and the old ones is that the old ones last a lot longer and they are more pigmented. That's the two things. And then the third thing is, like I said, as you build them, the old ones looked fine as you built them. These not as much. All right, next, is the tweed formula. This is tweed pink, which is now available on the site, or at least it was for a little while. The tweeds have tweed. They look like a tweed Chanel print. Couple things to say about the tweeds. Often they have like an overspray. The overspray is an overspray. So when that's gone, it's just, you know, blush. Some of them have a little bit more of an actual sparkle, but not really. They are not at all pigmented. You can barely see that on my arm. Now, tweed pink is one of the lighter ones that they have, but it's still not at all pigmented. It's on, like, if we're ranking it's a 1. There's not a lot of pigment there. There's not a lot of longevity there either. They have a 16-month shelf life, and this one has 0.19 ounces. For the new one, it is a 16-month shelf life and 0.21 ounces. So those are the Chanels. Now we have Chantecaille. And I'm not going to use the Flower Power Chantecaille because there is only one shade. I will say that one is very pretty and shimmery and light. I really like that formula, but since there's only one shade of it, I did not include it in this. I'm going to use instead what they call their cheek shades. There are like 6 of these. I picked Emotion, which is the B, because that's a rosy pink shade, which is going to be like all the rest of these shades. And Chantecaille's formula is very pretty. It is less powdery than the Chanel. It feels a little more creamy. It is something that you can build, but again, it is not super pigmented. I put this one more like 2.5 or 3. You can see though with this, how this has more of like a cream, where these have more, you can see they're more powdery on the arm. Scent-wise, they don't have a scent. Or at least I have no discernible scent in those. But I think you can see that these are more powdery. Like if I rub this in a little better here, they're very pretty, but this one looks like a creamier look. But I would say they're less pigmented actually than the Chanel's, except for the tweed, which is, you know, you barely even see. But it doesn't have a scent. Next is Charlotte Tilbury. So I have a number of Charlotte Tilburys. These are called Cheek to Chic. And I picked the shade Ecstasy. I did not pick Pillow Talk. Pillow Talk is one of those shades that everybody has. But this is a nice rosy pink. What I would say about these shades is she has like a lighter shade on the inside and then a deeper shade on the outside. For any of the blushes that have that, I'm going to mix the two. So you get in general, pretty pigmented look off the bat. They're very smooth. They feel very creamy. There's much less kick up than there is for the Chanel. In regards to pigmented, I'd put them on the same as the Chanel or the Chantecaille. You're in that, you know, 3+ range, 3 range. They are pigmented, but you do have to build them up. I did 3 swatches. I'm gonna do 3 swatches of each kind. But you can see once you get to 3 swatches, they're fairly pigmented. But if you put them on just, you know, by themselves at first, there's not a lot of pigment there. The one that's very different, of course, is the tweed. Again, still looks like it's not there. There is more shimmer to many of the Charlotte Tilburys, but not all of them. And the shades go on really well. They are pretty long lasting, I find, on my skin. Because they have more of a cream feel to them, when you look at this, you can see when I ran my finger over it, there wasn't a lot of like powder fly up. See when I go like this? It's very creamy. And it does feel very silky, very smooth on the skin. I actually really do like the Charlotte Tilbury blushes. I think they're very good. And I think the longevity is really good. And I find that I like the duality of the compacts. You have a lighter shade and a deeper shade, so that you can contour with the blush if you want to. You can use the lighter shade here and the deeper shade here. And get a dual toned look, and then you can blend them together. You don't have to do that, but I like that it has that option. All right, Dior. Let's do the quote regular Dior first. This is the Rouge Blush in Rose Montaigne. Rose Montaigne is one of my favorite shades. It's a lot of people's, I think. It's a good standard shade. It's a rosy pink. I'm trying to keep these all in the rosy pink family. The net weight here is 0.23 ounces and 12-month shelf life. So these, again, very creamy, pretty pigmented. I feel like these feel creamier than the Chanel's, more like the Charlotte Tilbury. Now, I think you can see already that this is much more pigmented than the Chanel's and the Chantecaille, and frankly, everything else that's up here. The Dior's are quite pigmented most of the time. There are a few Dior's that I found that aren't, but for the most part, all the Dior shades that I picked up have been really pigmented shades. They look really beautiful on the skin. Some are shimmery, some are more matte. It really does depend on the shade, but they are more pigmented across the board. So I'd say, going over these again, I'd say the old Chanel's and the new Chanel's, you're still in this, I'd say the old ones are like a 3+. This is the old, this is the new, this is like a 3. This is definitely a 1. The Chantecaille and the Charlotte Tilbury are 3s. And then I'd say the Dior is closer to a 4. It's definitely more than the old Chanel's, but I'd say a 4. Now again, when I'm ranking these based on pigment, I'm ranking them based on how they show up on me, because that's the only thing I can do. How they'll show up on someone else is impossible for me to say, because I don't, you know, I can only swatch it on me. And I've worn these and I can tell you. I think you could also say, you could go from a different scale. If you could also say like this is a 0 and then start there. So then this would maybe be a 2. But I'm going from a 1 to 5 scale, so I think we're gonna try to, you know, keep them in comparison to one another. Not necessarily worry so much about if it's a 1 or a -1, but in comparison to one another, this is a 4, this is a 1. All right, so now we have the Dior Backstage, and the Backstages come in these little packages, very different than the other Dior packaging. And this one is pink, and it's a very much a Barbie pink shade. We'll let the camera take a minute to find it, because you can see it's very bright. It's pink, but it actually doesn't show up as pink on as it does look in the packaging. But it's definitely pink, no doubt about it. So you can see for like the first swatch, it's still pretty pigmented. Second swatch, and third. I would say it's close to what you get with the Chanel, but a little bit more. It's a little bit more pigmented than the original Chanel's, but it's not quite as pigmented as the regular Dior blush. It has how much? It's 0.16 ounces and 12 months shelf life. These seem to have more of a glow, I've noticed, the Backstage ones. Not always, but they do seem to have more of a glow. They are definitely more, they tend to be more editorial almost, like the shades, even when you just get pink, it's like bright pink because it's the Backstage, which I think it lends itself to being more, you know, for like the runway almost. So they are, like I said, they are pigmented, and you can definitely build this one up. Same with the regular Dior. But I think you can see just from this that the Diors are much more pigmented than all of the rest. Okay, next we have Dolce & Gabbana. So I picked out the Powder Duo, but the formula, I do have the blush by itself as well. We're not gonna go into the highlighter. We're just gonna talk about the blush side of this. This is in Sweet Pink. Again, like I said, I promised I would try to keep this all in the pinky rosy kind of category. And these are incredibly silky. Like they feel, when even though there's a pattern on here, it feels super smooth and super, super silky. And I have to tell you, I really like the Dolce & Gabbana products. The highlighters, the bronzers, the blushes are beautiful. They tend to have a sheen. So you'll see here, this one especially has a sheen. Can you see that? Hopefully the camera picks it up. It is not shimmer, it's a sheen. It's the only way I can describe it. And it looks really good if you're looking for something that's like satiny on the skin. It really does look good on more mature skin, at least I found on my skin. I think you can also tell that it's fairly pigmented. Again, you're in that 4 range, or I would say 4. Definitely more than the Chanel's and the Chantecaille and the Charlotte Tilbury. These last really well. I don't know if I can say it lasts 24 hours because I don't know if I've ever worn it 24 hours, but it lasts a really long time, and they look beautiful on the skin. There is a scent. It's a Dolce & Gabbana scent. It's a light scent. It's not particularly strong. I'm just checking. Charlotte Tilbury has a little bit of a scent. The Dior Backstage, yep, Backstage has a scent. And the regular one has scents. So the only one that I haven't detected any scent was the Chantecaille. I didn't smell anything. Like at all. No, nothing. All the rest of them have some type of perfume. So if you look at these, just these, I think you can tell the Dior and the Chantecaille are the most pigmented. The Dior has this one has a little bit of sheen. The Backstage has like, I don't really know how to say it other than like presence. And the Dolce & Gabbanas have a sheen to them that I don't see in practically any other blush. We'll get to it in a minute when you start seeing the other ones, but this sheen is unusual. Okay, next, Hermes. So Hermes came out this year with their blushes, and it was the first time they did a blush release. They are 12 months and 0.21 ounces. So a lot of these are around the 0.21 ounces. This shade is Rose Ombre. And the blushes are good. I really do like the formula. They're very smooth. I didn't like the fact that there are refills for this, but then they were glued into their packaging. So I have said in some videos before that I kind of view these as a fail because I don't like the way that they were released. These are so silky, like silky, 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 silky. Okay? I mean, just super smooth, super smooth. There's very little powder kick up at all. Yeah, they have a beautiful formula. Now, I think what I might do is use the other arm because I just think that might be better so you guys can see them. All right, so let's swatch with the other finger. So super smooth, super silky. And the pigment is actually quite good. One swatch, two swatch, three swatch. I would put it in comparison to the Chanel's. And in fact, they feel like the Chanel on the face. When you put them on, they look really good on the skin. They blend really well. There's a number of different shades. The price point, we'll get to price point and, you know, a whole bunch of other things later. But the price point is higher because they're Hermes. But they do look really good on the skin. They have a satin look. They're not nearly, you see that shimmer again? Or whatever, you know, see that like the Dolce & Gabbana? They look flat next to that. Again, this is preference though. Maybe you want like a flatter looking blush. So, you know, we're not getting to the award part yet. But you can see that it has more of a resemblance to finish to the Chanel's. Now again, I also want to say I'm only using one shade. So there could be like one or two shades in a collection that are much more shimmery or much more flat or whatever, but I can't do every shade because it's just impossible. Laura Mercier. So this is Fresco, and Fresco is more of one of their shimmery shades. It does have more shimmer to it. So I want to say that at the outset, but it is a really pretty shade. It is 0.2 ounces, 12 months. And the Fresco is also, Laura Mercier is also very smooth. I think it's got more of that creamy feel. It's not as powdery as the Chanel's. And it's decently pigmented. I'd say around the same. You're looking at the 3 range. But it goes on beautifully on the skin. It leaves a nice satiny finish. Longevity is very good. Next we have Makeup by Mario, which is a very new one to the collection. This is in Desert Rose. I thought that was like the pinkiest one that I had from him. And his are more powdery, but they still have, you know, a feeling of silk. Now, you do get a lot of kick up with these, or at least I get a lot of kick up with these. And you can see it, like the Chanel, there's like extra powder, you have to blend it in. See that? Like it kind of... 1, 2, 3. And so you can see what I mean? Like you have to like take a little more time to blend that into your skin because there's more powder in it. It is about the same as the Chanel's in regards to pigment, but a little bit more. So I'd put it in that 3+. It's certainly not as pigmented as the Dior's or the Dolce & Gabbana, but it is more pigmented than the others. More pigmented than Chanel or Chantecaille or Charlotte Tilbury, or even actually Hermes. And the thing I'd say about the Makeup by Mario blushes, and you can see it if I can get you close and the camera will zoom in. You see all that like powder that's come up. That does happen, like you can see like where I swirled it. But interestingly enough, it's powdery, but it's so creamy in its application that it actually stays on for a really long time. I've had really good luck with the longevity of the Makeup by Mario, and I think it's an underrated product, especially given the price point. We'll get into that later, but the Makeup by Mario is not, you know, nearly, I mean, we'll put the prices, when I was doing all this, hopefully I'll go back in post and put down the prices for these. It is a much less expensive product than say, Hermes. It's just something to keep in mind. So, NARS. Now, NARS, I have the Overlust palette that has blushes in it. I have singles, that I have doubles. I have a whole bunch of different ones. But what I wanted to pick out of this one, there's a blush in here that I think will work well for what we're trying to talk about today. And I think it's a really pretty shade. It's definitely pinky. It's called Body Talk. And I think it epitomizes the NARS look. Now, everyone knows that NARS had the Orgasm blush, Orgasm X, Orgasm every kind of shade of blush, and that's a very popular shade. And even to this day, lots of people buy it. There's a reason that lots of people bought it, and it's because the NARS formula is good. It's also really pigmented, very pigmented. And it, you know, you can build it up. I did the 3 swatches. I think it's as pigmented as the Makeup by Mario, so you're getting in that 3+ range. I don't think it's quite as much as the Dior and the Dolce & Gabbana, but it's close. And it's really smooth. It looks really good on the skin. Again, I know it's NARS, but I really like it. And the Orgasm blush and some like the Orgasm X and stuff, they're much more shimmery, but there's many NARS blushes that aren't. And the formula is super soft. It is more powdery. It has more powder, but it's not as powdery, and like it blends actually easier than like the Makeup by Mario, because it does have more of like a creamy feel to it. And I have to say, when I use the NARS blushes, I am always reminded of why I liked NARS as a brand in the first place. I really think the formula for the NARS products are good. The lipsticks, the blushes, the eyeshadows, I know that over the last couple of years, they haven't been as in demand, but I have to tell you, I am impressed with what they've been coming out with lately. And when I go back to use NARS products, like the blushes, I'm always reminded of how much I like them. So I really do think the NARS brand is one that a lot of people have overlooked over the last couple of years because it was so popular for so long, and I think it kind of wore out its welcome. Next, we have Pat McGrath. Now, Pat McGrath was a long-awaited release for her blushes. And this one is in, did I pick up I think I picked up Flirtatious. Yeah, Flirtatious. I have a lot of the shades. I do not have some of the deeper shades in the blush, and one of the reasons I don't, you're going to see in a minute. They are all beautiful. I think they looked really good on the skin for everyone I've seen who's used these. But I am very pale and I like a light blush look. These are very creamy. They feel more like a baked gelée product. There's an edge to them, so they don't go all the way up to the pan. These shades, all of them, even the deeper shades, they might be like a little much for me, but they work on everybody. They are super creamy and they are really pigmented. Pick the lightest blush, and it's still, I mean, it's a pigmented blush. If I pulled out one of the deeper shades, you'd see how pigmented they are. I would put this, you know, in the 3+4 category. I'd say depending on the shade. This one is probably 3+, and then if you pull out some of the deeper shades, you're talking easily as pigmented as the Dior's. They are very creamy. They go on beautifully. I would say though, they don't go on as well with a super soft brush. Like they work, you can absolutely use a super soft brush, but they work a little better, in my opinion, with a little bit denser of a brush. And I think it's because it's the formula that they have. They stay on forever. They do not, the longevity on these is awesome. They are 18 months shelf life. It's interesting. 18 months, and they are is that 3.4? Yeah, 0.34 ounces. So you get more with the Pat McGrath. The formula on here, when you feel them, they feel silky but creamy. It's really interesting. I don't know, they feel like more of like a baked gelée kind of thing. So they're a little harder, but because they're a little harder, when you put these on your face, they don't dissipate like a true powdery one would. Like the Chanel's have the original Chanel's, they have a really good longevity to them, and they are powdery, but they're different. Their formula is different than the newer ones, and I'm not exactly sure what they did, but the new ones, as the day goes on, they're just gone. The old ones would stay on all day. The Pat McGrath stays on all day. It does not, it's just there. It's just there for the rest of the day, and it feels good on the skin. None of these so far I've found, these are all ones that, I kept, and so I like. They don't settle on the lines, are not bad for dry skin. There have been products that I have decluttered over time that did not look good on the skin. They were too powdery, or they accentuated lines, or they made my dry skin look even drier. I don't have those products anymore. So I would say for all these blushes that I'm going through today, there are going to be ones that get awards for, various things, but I like all of them because I've kept them. Anything I really hated, I got rid of. They're gone. So I just want to put that out there because people are going to be like, well, these are all good blushes. Yes, these are all good blushes. None of these are bad. None of these blushes I'd be like, I absolutely wouldn't buy again. Except for maybe one caveat, which I'll get to at the end. Next we have Patrick Ta. And I'm pulling out the Patrick Ta blushes not the cream blush formula, but just the blush. It's a little bit different in formula, but they're very close. This one is She's Passionate. And the Patrick Ta formula is super smooth. It feels very creamy. And I really like the Patrick Ta formula. I think the cream ones with the blush on top are great because they give you something that is really cool. You can put the blush, the powder down first, and then the cream, and the longevity is really good. But I didn't want to get into that today because we're just doing powders, so I didn't include those. This is just the powder part. What I would say though, it's actually not as pigmented. Not as pigmented as Pat McGrath. Not as pigmented as NARS, believe it or not. And certainly not as pigmented as Dior or the Dolce & Gabbana. Shelf life on these, it doesn't say on the back here, but I'll see if I can find out. And it's 0.37 ounces, so there's a lot in this packaging. All right, we are down to we're down to 5 more brands. Okay. Sisley. Now, as I said in my intro, I don't have the Sisley pigmented ones. I just have the orchid ones, which are different, and I know that, but I didn't want to leave these out because these are some of my favorite blushes. Now, I picked out the one in the rose shade, so you could see that one. Now, obviously, when I do this, the orchid blushes are highlighting blushes, so they are going to be more shimmery than, many of the blushes that I've pulled out. Okay, that is the Sisley blush. You can see though, they're not as pigmented. You're looking at like a 2. Definitely more so than the tweed, but not as much as the Chanel, or definitely not as much as the Dior or the Pat McGrath or many of the others. And they are definitely a less pigmented blush. They're more highlighting blush. They are more shimmery blushes, and they look great, fabulous on more mature skin. Because they're lighter, because they have more of an ethereal look, because they're more shimmery, you can use them and not really worry. The Sisley blushes that are the pigmented blushes that come in the round one, they are super pigmented. Like really, they're very intense. And I only have one shade, like I said, so I didn't want to, include those. But I will say those are very pigmented. If you're looking for a more pigmented blush and you want Sisley, go with those. They do look beautiful on the skin. And the one that I have does look really nice. I think it's rosewood. It is very pretty. It's very, very pretty. And I do recommend it as a blush. But I only have one shade and I was just like, I don't want to, speak to, I can only speak to the one I have. But the orchid blushes I have all 3 of them. There's only comes in 3 shades. They are, like I said, much less pigmented, more highlighty, and really good on more mature skin. They have like a skincare, I feel like they have like skincare in them because they feel very creamy. They are 0.52 ounces, so there's actually quite a bit in there. 18 months. They have more of this, like, I don't really know how to explain it. It's not this sheen that Dolce & Gabbana has. It's like I said, it's like a highlighting blush, which is what it is. It just looks seamless on the skin. It's one of my favorite blushes, honestly. Okay, Suqqu. So I picked the 124 in Suqqu, which has, I think, more of the pinkish shade. I'm gonna keep on this end. Similar to the Sisley though, these are highlighting, they can be highlighting blushes. You can mix the 2 together. And I will put in a little bit of that so you can see it. But I want you to see, and then we'll have to change arms, the shade and the feel of these. They are beautiful blushes, but they are less pigmented, as you can see. I think they're along the lines of the tweed from Chanel, maybe on the same par as the Sisley Orchids. They are light blushes. They are not particularly pigmented. Now, the thing that Suqqu does, though, is although they are not super pigmented, I feel like they have they have this feel to them. They're so ethereal looking on the skin that even though there's not a ton of pigment, they don't seem to go chalky on people. A lot of people find, or at least I've seen, that blushes that are lighter, they go chalky on a deeper skin tone. The Suqqu doesn't seem, and again, I'm only basing this on what I've seen. I can't talk about it on myself. They don't seem to do that. They have a pigment that seems to work on a number of different skin tones well. It might not show up as much, but it doesn't seem to go as chalky. So the formula does seem to work on a lot of different people. I really like, for an ethereal, light, just like a flush, I like the Suqqu very much for that type of look. For when I'm looking for something much more like a strong statement of blush, it's gonna be these or these, not these. We've got 3 more. We've got Surratt. And for Surratt, I chose La Vie en Rose because, again, we're trying to stick with those rosy shades. They come in these little packages, and then you can put them in bigger Surratt cases. And we're gonna have to figure out a space to do this. Let's do it here. So Surratt is similar to Suqqu in that they're not super pigmented, but they do seem to have a kind of formula that looks really nice and surreal, not surreal, and ethereal on a lot of folks. The thing that I would say though, again, you're probably looking at a 2 in regards to pigment. There's not a ton of different shades. There's some, but not a lot. I don't know what the size is on this one, but I'll see if I can get information on that. The thing I like about the Surratt shades is that they have more of that Suqqu look. So it's more of that ethereal, soft flush of color. Suqqu is similar to that. I would say the tweed is even less than that. And it's not a strong pigmented statement of blush. It's more of a, like I said, a flush of color. It looks really pretty on the skin, whether you pick a shade that has more shimmer or more matte. They all look nice. They don't look powdery. They don't look chalky, at least on me. And I think they blend really well. All right, now we're gonna get into Tom Ford. And so we're gonna do the old Tom Ford versus the new. The old Tom Ford, we're gonna use Inhibition, which is a great shade, which doesn't exist anymore as far as I know. And the old Tom Ford is so silky. It's the silkiest, in my opinion, of any of these. Like, it's pure silk. Pure silk. And if you picked up a shade like Savage, it's very, very pigmented. All right, so let's do it here. This is one of the lighter shades because I like a lighter blush. And that's Inhibition. The thing about the Tom Ford blushes is they have a similar reaction to your finger as the Makeup by Mercier did. Can you see like the swirl? There's like you can see the swirl that I made with my finger. They are very, very buildable. So although right now it doesn't look particularly pigmented, I would say on the skin, as you start to build these up, they get very pigmented and they don't ever look cakey. And I'm doing this for this one, and I didn't do it for the others because I want you to see what I'm talking about when I show you this shade and Illuminate. See how easy that was to build? And there's not powder, there's not like, you know, it doesn't look chalky or cakey or anything. No matter how many layers of the Tom Ford you put on, kind of like the old Chanel, it looks good. So if you are like me and you want like the lighter part, you just put on 1 or 2 and then you're done. If you want the deeper pigment, you just do it a couple of times and it gets really deep. The other shades of the Tom Ford, like Savage and stuff, are super, they're very deep shades. And I have those where I've had them for years and it looks like they're brand new because I can use very little. The new ones, the Shade and Illuminates, look like this. This is in Brazen Rose. This is, again, the lightest because I wanted to be fair to Tom Ford and show you the lightest of the old formula and the lightest of the new formula. And they're different in their formulation. They still feel super silky, but you see how when I do that, you don't get as much of the like product. You can't see the swirl as much. I don't know exactly what that means, but what happens is you don't get the same buildup. I'm going to do the 3 shades, 3 swatches. You can see how much lighter, like less pigmented it is. And when you start building it up, you can do it, but it doesn't really look as good on the skin. It starts to look powdery and you still never get the intensity that you get with the old formula. So if you look at all of these so far, I think you can tell that of them all, the Pat McGrath is definitely a pigmented one. The Patrick Ta is a pretty pigmented one as well. And then You know, the Dior and the Dolce & Gabbana really stand out, in my opinion. They are very pigmented shades, and they're really good. I really like the Dior blushes quite a bit. Last but not least is Wayne Goss. Now, I picked up the Coral Rose, and I'm only going to use the blush. I'm not going to use the highlighter in this, just the blush. And I will say, though, that these work really well together. If you put the highlighter down first and then the blush, it creates a very pretty look. Now, this one is not nearly as smooth. The Tom Fords are super silky. A lot of these are super silky. Some are more powdery, as I've said, as we've gone through. The Wayne Gosses aren't. They feel a little more stiff, and they feel less silky. They feel more powdery. They don't have a lot of kick up. We'll put it right here. But they also aren't super pigmented. That's the three. You can see that they might not be as light as Tweed, but they're close. I would put it in the 1+, maybe 2. So those are all the blushes by brand. Before we get to the awards, a couple things I didn't mention were scents. I stopped somewhere along the way talking about scents. Dolce & Gabbana has a scent. The Hermes has a scent. It's light. The Laura Mercier, none that I can detect. Mario, no. NARS, no. Pat McGrath, nope. Patrick Ta, nope. Let's see, Sisley, nope, don't detect anything there. Suqqu, nope. Surratt, nope. Tom Ford, Shade and Illuminate, I don't smell anything. I don't smell anything on the old ones either, although they are old. Not super old, but they're old, so it's possible that the scent is gone. I do smell something in the Wayne Goss. So those are all the scents. Now, hopefully in post-production, I put the price points down below. Hopefully they're all there. So, and that is relevant because as we go through all of these, like I said in the beginning, these are all blushes that I like. These are the ones that I have kept. There have been brands that I have tried over time that I have not been particularly fond of. And I will mention right now, there's a couple of brands that you're probably like, oh, she didn't use any of those, including Bobbi Brown, MAC, Melt, Yves Saint Laurent, Guerlain, Givenchy, right? All of those are not part of this blush battle. And in some cases, it's because I've tried their blushes and I hated them and I got rid of them. And in some cases, I don't have their blushes, or if I have like one and I don't feel like I can really speak to the collection as a whole. So this is not the entire world of blush. That's the first thing. These aren't any of the cream blushes. These are just powders. So, you know, that's a whole nother world. And then, as I said repeatedly now, I like all of these brands. So I like all of these blushes. They're all good. I said in the beginning earlier, I said there's one caveat to that. The new Chanel blushes, I don't know if I would buy them again. That's not because the new Chanel blushes are bad. The new Chanel blushes are good. They're not great. They're good. But compared to what they were before, I think it was a downgrade for me personally. So I'm probably not going to pick up too many of those blushes. However, I did pick up Ombre, which was their new shade, and I really like it. The thing about Ombre, though, is it only works, in my opinion, on pale skin tones. It doesn't show up on people who have, you know, a medium skin tone, I would say, or deeper. I have friends who are medium skin toned who bought it and they returned it because it blended with their skin. So I bought it because it looks nice on me, but, you know, again, I don't know how many of the blushes I will buy. We'll have to see. We'll just have to see. Like I said, I still like the Chanel blushes, the new ones. I think they're good. I obviously will buy them because I bought the Ombre, but it's not like I'm excited to buy tons of them. You know, it's a little different. The awards that I'm doing just five top awards, because I could give an award. I could ostensibly come up with something for each one of these blushes and say, oh, this one's this, and this one's this, and this one's this. But I think I went through when I was explaining the blushes, and I did this, what each strength was. But we're going to go through really quickly. Chanel, the strength of Chanel is, for the old ones, I really feel like they were very, very buildable. And I think overall they worked on a lot of different people. Not everybody, but a lot of different people. And there were lots of shades. And I thought they were good all around, like a good solid blush. The newer ones are okay. They're good, but they're not as good as the older ones. The tweeds I like because they are extremely light. And when I like a very light blush with just a little bit of shimmer, I like that. The Chantecailles are really pretty, easy, not too pigmented. You know, you can just, they work well. And I think they leave a really pretty finish behind. I really like them. I think they're pigmented enough to work on a lot of people. The Charlotte Tilbury blushes are great. I love the duo part of them, which is one of the reasons I actually like the new Tom Fords as well. You have two shades in a blush. You can intensify or lighten or, you know, use it as almost like a contouring kind of thing. And they work really well. All the shades are really pretty. I actually have multiples. The Diors are very pigmented. I mean, people don't talk about that enough, but the Diors, as you saw in my swatches, they're extremely pigmented. The regular Diors. There's lots of great shades. I think they look really beautiful on. The Backstage have like more quirky shades sometimes, if that's a word for it. They're just, you know, more like runway. And I think they can have some really cool stuff. Plus, they are very pigmented. Dolce & Gabbana, they're the only ones I've ever seen that have like a satin finish. So if you're looking for that satin, true like a sheen on a blush, Dolce & Gabbana has it. And I love the Dolce & Gabbana products for their quality. They do look beautiful. Hermes are really good all-around blush. I don't have anything bad to say about them except for the packaging. And they're good. They're just very expensive for what they are. And there are other really good products other blushes. So do I think they're bad? No, absolutely not. I think they're really good blushes. I think Hermes did a great job. But again, you know, there's lots of really good ones that I like here. Laura Mercier, great for the price point. There's lots of different shades. The Fresco is one of my favorites. It looks really good on more mature skin. I think it's a beautiful choice, and it's on the less expensive. They're not cheap, less expensive. Makeup by Mario is a really good product and new to the market, and it doesn't get a lot of attention. It's a great price point. It does really last. There's not as many shades. I think there's like 5, maybe 6 shades. NARS. NARS is a true elder statesman. It's been around for a long time, and there's a reason Orgasm became such a big thing. Now, I don't think Orgasm blush looks great on everybody. I think it can be too orangey, too shiny. It's too like 90s. But I love Orgasm blush. I do. I still wear it to this day. I really like the shade for me. The X one I don't. But the point is, there's a reason that everyone wore it. It's like the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk. There's a reason these things, you know, become viral and everybody buys them. Because they're good. So the NARS products are still good. And I like their blushes. I think they're a good blush. Pat McGrath. She has a really different shade range. Like there's lots of different types of shades. and good for paler skin, deeper skin, and there's like really unusual shades in her collection. They're very creamy. They last forever. Patrick Ta. I like the Patrick Ta plain blushes, just the one I showed you. I think he really shines with his cream / powder blush, but that's in a category all of itself, which I didn't want to introduce into all of this. But if you're interested in that, Patrick Ta is the way to go. Sisley. The Sisley pigmented blushes I know are extremely pigmented, like extremely. And I do think they're good. I don't have more than one, so I don't feel like I can really test it out, but I can say from what I've seen, I really like the Sisley blush, the pigmented one, so that might be something you want to try if you're looking for something more pigmented. If you want a highlighting blush, this is absolutely the one to buy. It's the orchids are stunning on the skin, and they look amazing on more mature skin especially. Suqqu and Surratt. I put them together like that because they have a similar vibe. They are both kind of like ethereal and light, but they don't look chalky on a deeper skin tone, at least from what I have seen. I think they do work really beautifully on a lot of folks, especially the Suqqu. And the Suqqu has the gradient, which means that you can take the left side and make it more pigmented, more blush-like. The right side is a highlighter, and you can mix the two and get more of that Sisley look. I don't love gradation generally, but Suqqu pulls it off. Tom Ford, old Tom Ford. They are the silkiest of all the formulas, the Tom Ford ones. They just glide, your finger glides over both of them. For me, in my experience, the Shade and Illuminates work really, really well, and I really like them. But they are not very pigmented. And I like the duality. I like having two shades in one compact. I like that because it's like the Charlotte Tilbury. I like being able to sort of contour a little bit with the blush and then mix them together to get a shade. One is a little more shimmer, one is a little bit more matte. I like that. I also think they look really good on me and they do last. However, the original ones were definitely more pigmented, are gonna work on more folks. And then the Wayne Goss is a really beautiful blush, but it really shines when you're putting it over the highlighter that comes with it. When you put the highlighter down and put the blush on top, the look is really hard to match in any product. But in and of itself, by the blush, I'm not blown away. All right, so I think that's encapsulating everything that we just talked about. So now I'm gonna do the awards. First, for the longest wearing blush on me, I am 49 years old. I have drier skin, although lately it's become more combination. But it is more mature. Like I said, it is drier. I have lines. What looks, when I say longest wearing, I mean it stays on my face. It doesn't dissipate. It doesn't start to like break down. It doesn't look cakey or settling, any of that. It's the Pat McGrath. The Pat McGrath ones last all day. They still look creamy. They still look really good. I have to say the formula is really, for me, for my skin, really exceptional. All the other blushes I have, you know, at the end of that kind of day, they do look, they'll either dissipate more or they will start to look cakey. The original Chanel's last a really long time on me as well and look really, really good. But I have a different category for the Chanel. So they're very, very close. The most illuminating, you know what I'm gonna say. It's the Sisley Orchid blushes. Now, I know some of you will be like, well, some of the other blushes can be illuminating as well. There are Chanel illuminating blushes, and there are, and I did not pull those into this. And the reason I didn't pull them into this is I have 3 Chanel categories as it is, and I was just like, you gotta cut it off somewhere. But the Sisley Orchid blushes are really very unique. There's something about them that's in there. It says White Lily, and I'm not exactly sure what properties are in the Sisley blush, but I promise you, if you are, especially if you have more mature skin, drier skin, older skin, the Sisley blushes, the Orchid blushes do something that is just really illuminating and beautiful on the face. All of them, all the shades. I think there's 3 shades, rose, coral, and then the original. They really are beautiful. They are expensive, but they have a property to them that don't see in any other formula. The most pigmented. Now, you know, you could argue it's the Pat McGrath because there are shades in the Pat McGrath that are extremely pigmented and definitely have deeper tones to them. There's depth to them that the other ones don't have. But I would say across the board, it's Dior. It's the single Diors. And, you know, we don't talk about it that much because I think Dior, I guess the Dior blushes are popular, don't get me wrong, but it's just not something that people necessarily talk about when it comes to Dior. But the Dior blushes, I'm telling you, they are pigmented. They are extremely pigmented. Now, the old Tom Fords are as well, especially like the Savage, and there's a couple of other shades by Tom Ford that are very, 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 very pigmented. But my understanding is those are discontinued, or they're on their way out. They're not going to exist anymore. And I have found that some of the old Tom Fords are very pigmented and others aren't. The Dior's, every one that I have, that's just me, that I have, has been very pigmented. And like the Autumn Mood one that I just picked up, and it's like the orange, that sucker is like a bright sprite. When I first tried it, before I went on camera with it, I was just trying it out, and I, you know, did like I kind of like brushed. I wasn't thinking, and I just sort of put it in the brush, and then I just went like this. I had a swipe of orange up the side of my face that I was like, well, that's not gonna work. And I couldn't even, like, I had to take it off. I had to take it off. The Dior blushes are really good, and I think they work on a lot of different people, and there's a lot of shades. There's a lot of shades. My only issue with Dior, I shouldn't say only, there are issues with Dior, and partially it's, you know, customer service, to be frank. A lot of times the Dior shades that are limited edition shades are my favorite shades, and they don't show up on other sites. You can only get them on Dior, and sometimes you can't even get them, and it gets complicated. But the product itself is excellent, and from what I've seen, most pigmented. The best value. Now, that's a tricky one because a lot of folks will be like, well, the more expensive ones have better skincare, or they look better on more mature skin, and that's absolutely true. I don't disagree with that. But like I said, I think these are all good blushes. There's a baseline here. I don't have anything that falls below that baseline. And I'd say the best value is the Makeup by Mario. They are really underrated. They're really good. They're good, really, really good blushes. They last a really long time. They're very silky. They look good on the skin. They look good on my skin, which is drier and older, and I've seen them on young skin, and they look good on that too. There are fewer shades. He doesn't have as extensive of a line yet, but they're like $24 or something in that price range, compared to $90 for Tom Ford, or I don't even remember. I think the Chanel's, I'm not even sure what the Chanel's are up to at this point, or the Hermes or the Dior. They're very expensive. So for a single blush that works extremely well and lasts really long, not as long as Pat McGrath, but almost, and looks really good on the skin, it's the best value. Okay, and then the last category was one that actually I was gonna call it like best blush, but I can't get to best blush because it's just, that's too simplified. But I picked this up from somebody's comment, and I can't remember who suggested it when I did my makeup that lasts all day. Someone suggested, can you do a foolproof makeup video, which basically is you reach for this, you know it's gonna work, you don't have to worry about it. And it's a great idea. And I'm sorry I've forgotten. If I can remember and find it, I'll put down below who suggested it. But the foolproof blush for me, and anyone who's watched my channel for a while knows what it's gonna be, it's the old formula of Chanel. That formula, I worked for Chanel for a couple of years, so that probably has a lot to do with it. I feel comfortable with it. I like the smell. It's a strong smell. If you don't want fragrance, don't buy it. They work for me, all of them, every shade, from mocha to rose bronze to rose petal to evening beige to reflex to every jersey, every single shade works. And if I'm doing someone else's makeup, I know I can find a Chanel blush that's gonna work. Like I can find one. I'm gonna find one that works for you. And Golden Sand, which they don't make anymore. They don't make a lot of these shades anymore, but the point is, they're foolproof. I feel like they are buildable. They last forever on your face and in like just keeping them. They just don't seem to go bad. They're just really amazing blushes, and I don't know what Chanel did to them. And I find that disheartening. Now, I know that a lot of you are going to be disappointed in that choice because you can't buy them. The old blushes are old, and that formula doesn't exist anymore. You can find them on secondary sites. You can find them on Mercari and eBay and everything. Although I would, you know, obviously if you're buying secondary makeup, you got to be careful because who knows who used them before, you know, they have to disinfect, all those things. So I get that. I have a lot of these from, you know, I've had them for years. But also I know people in the business who I can get them from. But I have pretty much all the shades that I want at this point. And yes, eventually I guess I'll have to throw them away, but they last, I mean, I keep them way longer than I probably should, I'm sure. But they're not exposed to sunlight. They're not exposed to air most of the time. You know, I try to keep them as long as I can. Those are the foolproof blushes, in my opinion. If I had to pick a backup right now, what I would consider foolproof, like if I didn't have the Chanel blushes, that's super hard for me to decide because there isn't a blush collection like Chanel that exists. I would say that Suqqu is probably my second choice. It's a very different kind of blush, but there's something about the Suqqu blushes that just really look good on the skin. And when I say foolproof, they're basically foolproof. I've never bought a Suqqu blush that looked bad on me. Now again, I'm very pale, so you know it's gonna show up no matter what. But they have a quality about them, and I'm assuming that there's something in the ingredients that make them just look good on skin. Like they just look good. Now, I'm not going to say every shade was my favorite because some of them aren't, but I bought a lot of, I buy them all unseen because you can't get them here in the US. I can't see them in store. I just buy them sight unseen. I mean, I see pictures, but it's not the same. And I've loved every single one of them. So if I couldn't have my old Chanel's, I'd pick the Suqqus. So that is it, guys. That is the end of the blush awards, the blush battles, whatever you want to call them. Again, I know it's not a, you know, one-on-one comparison, and there are different shades that I showed you in the swatches, but I think I went through pretty clearly what the strengths and weaknesses were for the different brands and the different blushes. The price points should have been when I was going through them, so you saw those. And a caveat to all of this. This is my opinion. This is my experience. You may have a completely, and probably do, a completely different list. You probably look at all these blushes and go, she's absolutely crazy. How could she not, you know, say this is the longest wearing or this is the best or whatever. And that's okay. That's good because we all have different opinions about these things. But I really did put a lot of time and thought into why I like certain blushes for certain things and how I felt about them as I went through all of this. And it is really interesting to note that the blushes that, like I said, that I really didn't like, I got rid of. I don't have them anymore. And there are brands that I don't have blushes from that I thought I did, and I don't. And so now I'm interested in maybe picking a few of those up. There's also new brands to the market that I have not tried. And if there are new brands that you think are worth trying out that are powder, let me know. I do have a lot of cream blushes that I really enjoy, and there's a number of them. And if you want a cream blush battle, let me know. Again, it will take me some time because I actually do put time and effort into like thinking it all out. I don't just like say, yeah, this one's the best. But like Burberry, for example, I do have some Burberry blushes inside the compacts that I have, like the palettes. I didn't review those because I don't have enough experience with them. Like there's a number of different brands. So if there are others that you really would like some thoughts on that I didn't mention today, or I might not have, let me know. I'd love to hear your comments just overall. I'm sure, like I said, there's gonna be a lot of people who have a very different opinion of all the rankings. I didn't really rank them, but you know, all the awards and what my thoughts on all of these, but I welcome that as well. So thanks so much for joining me today, guys. I really do appreciate it, and I hope to see you in another video really soon.